For busy moms and exhausted moms, sometimes sanity is found in the freezer. What do I mean by that? Having a stockpile of homemade meals that you have prepared in advance and can take out and reheat on nights when you really need it. That is a safety net that I find comfort in. When I first started having kids, I had a moment where it dawned on me. I'm going to have to figure out dinner for the rest of my life. Nobody is going to do this for me. Here on YouTube, I have been loving showing you all the creative ways I am batch cooking and stocking my freezer so me and my family can still enjoy homemade food even when I need a break from cooking. In this video, I'm sharing 40 recipes for cozy family dinners, made from scratch staples, and delicious homemade snacks that you can prepare ahead of time and freeze for later. I hope this video can be a sort of freezer meal prep resource for you, as I've been gathering content and sharing tips on how to take these meals from freezer to table. Some of these meals are fully cooked, some are dumped in a bag and cooked later. There are plenty of ways to do this, and I'm sharing lots of ideas with you today. This is a long video. Feel free to watch it in the background as you go about your work today, and I hope it brings a sense of calm and comfort to your home. I'm starting by chopping 2 onions in the food processor. Really? Yeah! So for this lasagna recipe, I'm making a slow simmered meat sauce, and I'm doing a double batch. So I have 2 pounds of ground beef and 2 pounds of pork here, and I'm seasoning it really well. I'm adding a teaspoon of sage, thyme, pepper, 2 teaspoons of oregano, a teaspoon of basil, 2 teaspoons of garlic, and a teaspoon of onion powder, and then 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then I'm just mixing this all up really well, and then I'm gonna saute those 2 onions in the pot and then add all of that meat. I thought I should add the seasonings in with the meat first because there's so much here, so it's gonna take a minute for everything to mix together and cook. I'm going to be doing a lot of tasks in the kitchen today, all simultaneously, so hopefully this is easy to follow, but I'm adding 2 tablespoons of white vinegar and 2 tablespoons of maple syrup to this meat and giving that a minute to simmer a bit more. And now I'm washing my celery, and I'm going to blend up my veggies for a mirepoix, which I'm gonna need for the beef ragu recipe that I have planned. And this time I'm utilizing my food processor for all of the chopping just to save me some time in the kitchen today. To the meat, I added 2 28-ounce cans of San Marzano whole tomatoes, which I had blended, and then I added 4 tablespoons of tomato paste and 2 cans of diced tomatoes. I'm getting some Parmesan cheese prepped for the cheese mixture now. I'm pulling everything out now that I need for the lasagna cheese mixture. For this double batch, I need 3 cups of cottage cheese, 3 cups of ricotta cheese, a cup of Parmesan cheese, 2 teaspoons of oregano, 4 tablespoons of fresh parsley chopped, which I didn't have, so I used dried parsley, and then a teaspoon of salt. I actually just noticed I had a bit of leftover chopped parsley, so I went ahead and added that. This is my cheese mixture, and then this is the slow simmered lasagna sauce. This is so yummy. You should definitely try this. I posted this recipe on my blog in detail, so you can definitely make it. I'm doing a double batch, but the recipe is for a single batch. But this is a great make-ahead meal. It's so easy to make a double batch of this, and it's very filling. Each of these meals should last like 2 days, I think, for my family.
I want to help you with this.
All right, you can help make the cheese. You ready?
You would end up in...
Good.
That's what I was thinking.
Another one right next to it. For reheating from frozen, I have learned that everything takes longer than I initially first thought. So I would suggest thawing it as long as you can and then baking it covered at 350 or 375 for at least an hour, and then taking off the foil to crisp the top of the lasagna. For the extra meat sauce, I'm freezing it flat in a bag for a future pasta night. This is a super easy Mexican instant pot chicken soup from the blog Against All Grain.
Yeah.
Excuse me, dear.
I love lime.
Yeah?
Can you put lime on the carrot?
Who wants a lime?
I do! What's that stuff?
Salsa Verde.
Is it like pickle sauce? Took like a lot of licks of this and
Let's do 2 in here. Probably should do more.
water.
Just so that they're even, and I can add more chicken broth later. You can cook this from frozen. I would just let it thaw enough so that you can remove it from the container and dump it into the Instant Pot and cook it on high pressure for 35 minutes. Then remove the chicken and shred it, and scoop all but a half cup of the veggies into a blender and puree that, and then mix that back into the soup. This is a delicious recipe. We love this one. For cooking, I took one of the containers out, let it thaw on the counter for about 2 hours, added it to the Instant Pot. I also added some extra chicken broth that was frozen, and then I cooked it in the Instant Pot for 30 minutes. Then I removed the chicken and blended up the broth with a hand blender, and now I'm just shredding the chicken and I'll add that back in. You can also add some extra veggies when you go to cook this soup if you want more vegetable chunks in your soup, but this was really delicious. The broth is very flavorful. I could just drink it up, and we like to serve it either over rice or with some sour cream and cheese or some chips on the side. It's a really delicious and nourishing soup. It came together with almost no effort. I just pulled it out of my freezer, let it thaw on the counter, stick it in the Instant Pot, and here you go. Making French dip sandwich meat that goes into the slow cooker. This recipe is on my website. I'm going to start off by making a spice blend, and I will link the recipe in the description. And then you just pour that all into the bag, and then I'm also adding in a little bit of broth and some tomato paste and a tiny bit of bone marrow just because I had it, and that will slow cook all day and turn into a delicious meat for sandwiches. This is one of my favorite foolproof freezer meals. It always turns out delicious. If you are planning to make this the next day, I would take it out of the freezer, let it thaw in the fridge overnight, and then cook it in the slow cooker on low for 10 hours. It turns into this beautiful meat that just falls apart. We like to serve it on homemade buns and then pour some of the extra sauce over the top, and also some pickled red onions go wonderful with this. We're making another simple chicken taco recipe. Pinch of Yum has so many awesome, easy recipes. So here we go again with another Pinch of Yum recipe. So I'm getting my chicken into the bags, and now I'm moving on to dicing up some jalapeno. All right, now into each bag, we're adding 1 jalapeno diced. Then we're adding in half of a red onion diced into each bag. Next, 2 cups of finely chopped pineapple into each bag. I did not chop mine finely enough, but that's okay. We're not worrying about that today. 1 teaspoon of salt in each bag, 1 teaspoon of chili powder each, a tablespoon of sriracha in each bag, a tablespoon of yellow mustard, which I thought was interesting. This time I did not forget to double it. You're gonna do 3 cloves of garlic minced in each bag.
So the recipe calls for 1/4 cup of water for each bag. Since I have this beef broth, I'm just gonna use that instead, since I know it's gonna add a little bit more flavor to this. Kind of mix this together, you know, get all these flavors blended with the chicken, and then that's it. It smells really, really good. The mustard adds a really interesting flavor and smell. I think that's gonna be so good.
I was having a hard time getting the chicken to mix in this bag, so I had to reach my hand in, which I really didn't want to do. But then I washed my hand and sealed it up really well, and I'm putting these in the freezer. This is another slow cooker recipe, but you can also finish it off in the oven to make that chicken a little more crispy. Here is another visual of the recipe for you guys if you want to screenshot it, and I will also leave the link in the description. For serving, I would first make this jalapeno ranch dressing. It's so good. And then to cook this from frozen, I would cook it in the Instant Pot on high for 20 minutes and then do a quick release and then dump it out onto a sheet pan. You're gonna broil it in the oven for about 10 minutes until it's nice and crispy and some of those juices have thickened and evaporated. Just stay close by so it doesn't burn. And then I'm adding some of that ranch to some cabbage to make a slaw. And it should look about like this. You can also cook it in the slow cooker from thawed on low for 3 to 4 hours. However you choose to cook it is fine, but serve it over warm tortillas with some cabbage slaw, and it is delicious. So I'm going to do half freshly milled flour and half all-purpose flour for this. I love this recipe so much, and so I'm gonna double it. It's from Natasha's Kitchen. I'm doing 500 grams of freshly milled flour, hard white wheat, and then 500 grams of all-purpose flour, and then you wanna do 24 grams of sea salt. Mix that all together with your hands. At this moment, you can see my dread and disappointment as I realized that I did too much salt.
I just did double the amount of salt. I forgot I had already doubled the recipe that I was following, and so in my head I thought I still needed to double it. I really should have caught myself because I knew that 2 tablespoons of salt is definitely way too much. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save half of this flour. I already mixed it in, so I'm gonna take half of this flour out, put it in a container, and use it the next time I make pizza dough, and refill it with half of fresh flour that hasn't been salted.
Okay, so I'm measuring out 500 grams of flour from the bowl, and then the rest of it I'm putting in containers. And now I'm gonna put an extra 500 grams of flour into the bowl with the other flour. So hopefully that will even it all out, and it will be the right amount of salt. Now add 670 grams of water and 200 grams of active sourdough starter, and just get that mixed up as best as you can. I like to use a hard wooden spatula for this, and once it gets almost fully incorporated, I switch over to my dough spatula to really scrape the sides of the bowl. Now cover and rest for 30 minutes. Going to knead my sourdough pizza dough until I get a somewhat smooth ball. And you're gonna need to use some flour while you do this. You can do this straight in the bowl or on a clean work surface. And then you're gonna put it into an oiled bowl and let it rise for the next couple of hours.
This recipe is from Natasha's kitchen, and she originally has you separate it out into 4 dough balls and put it in these little containers and then stick it in the fridge. But since I doubled it, I'm gonna do 4 of the smaller ones, and then I'm gonna do 2 larger ones. So these will make a large pizza, like a normal size, and these make sort of like medium-sized pizzas. Medium/small, which is sometimes nice because it's easier to actually cook the smaller pizzas. They're easier to work with. So that's what I'm gonna do. We can have a mix of things. And these will just go in my fridge, and once they're fermented a little bit more, I'm going to stick the extra ones in the freezer. I'm probably gonna wrap them up and then stick them in the freezer, but then I will keep these in the fridge and use them later this week. Okay, let's get to work. You can see the bubbles. So this did what it was supposed to do today. It's always nice to see that. This little glob of dough, separate it out. Sourdough pizza is the best pizza crust you can make. I have made a lot of different pizzas, but definitely the best I've ever made is with this recipe. I think this is like one of the best things to prep ahead of time and put in your fridge, even when you don't have plans yet on what you're gonna eat, because pizza is just so easy to make when the dough is already ready for you. Pizza 1 is done.
So I did end up using the 4 smaller ones later on in the week, and I ended up dividing them into halves. And so we had a bunch of smaller pizzas, and I found the best way to cook these is on a hot cast iron skillet, just like I do the tortillas, but then adding the toppings on the dough once it starts to bubble up, and the cheese and all that, and then drizzle it with some olive oil and some seasonings and stick it in the oven on the broiler function so it's super hot. And then just give it, I don't know, basically like 5 minutes. It takes no time at all. And then you have this crispy, perfectly cooked little sourdough pizza. So delicious.
All right, so you're seeing a lot of recipes in this video, and you're gonna see a lot more here in a minute, but first I wanna talk about meal planning. Meal planning is so important for reducing overwhelm as a busy mom, which is one of the big reasons I create videos like this. I want moms everywhere to feel less overwhelmed. I want you to feel empowered and encouraged in the kitchen, to not have that dinner dilemma. Oh no, what am I gonna make? Now, because I'm sharing so many recipes in this video, there's no way you're gonna be able to remember everything. And so that's why I wanna tell you about the ReciMe app. ReciMe is a great way to save any recipes that you find online and never lose them again. So if you find a recipe on Instagram that you wanna make, you can save it immediately to the app and organize it. If you find it on a blog post or TikTok, it can transcribe whatever it is on the post, turn it into a clean, organized recipe card, and you can save it to your app. So when I scroll my app, I see all the different things that I was inspired by and that I want to make. It's a great way to stay organized and reduce the mental load in your head, because you know you've saved the recipes, you don't need to think about it anymore, and when you're ready to think about dinner, you can open your ReciMe app, find it again, and go ahead and make it. So So if you haven't checked out ReciMe yet, now's a great time. They're offering a 2-week exclusive free trial to ReciMe Plus if you use the link in my description. All right, now let's get back to cooking. All right, I'm ready for some quick wins. And I'm about to put together Instant Pot Korean beef tacos. First, in a food processor, I'm gonna mix together the sauce, and I'm gonna basically be doing this for every recipe. I'm gonna make a sauce and then put it in a bag with some meat and stick it in the freezer. So hopefully in a short amount of time, we'll get like 4 or 5 meals in the freezer. It really helps to crush your garlic first before you peel it. It just comes off so much easier. Now you can just easily get all that skin off.
So I am doubling this recipe. I've put almost a whole head of garlic in the food processor, and now I'm peeling a 2-inch knob of ginger with a spoon. I think that's the easiest way to do it. This recipe calls for canned pears, which I have drained. I've never used anything like this in a recipe before, so I'm excited to try it.
1 cup of brown sugar and 1 cup of soy sauce. 2 tablespoons of toasted sesame seed oil. I'm just gonna pour this in here and process all of the meat later. I'm gonna do all the sauces first. All right, this one's pretty simple. Probably don't even really need the food processor, but I'm gonna use it anyways. 2, wait a minute, I'm doubling this. 4. Okay, good. I can do this. Wow, that's spicy. I can it's like in the air. 1. There's gotta be a better way to measure 6 tablespoons of honey.
Okay, so into this food processor, I've done 4 chipotle peppers in adobo sauce, 6 tablespoons of honey, 4 garlic cloves, the zest of 2 oranges, and about 3 to 4 tablespoons of freshly squeezed orange juice. 2 teaspoons of salt, a tablespoon of taco seasoning, a tablespoon of chili powder, and a tablespoon of cumin, as well as 4 tablespoons of avocado oil.
Save these chipotle peppers for another time. So I'm gonna stick these in the freezer, clean this whole thing up. All right. Wow, I really expected more sauce. But that's okay, because this is gonna be very spicy, so we only wanna use a little bit of it. It's really spicy. And it needs more orange. I'm gonna add more. All right, so I added more orange and I instantly liked that better. So I think it actually needs like some lime too, but I don't have any lime. So I think if I just serve the chicken with some lime and some sour cream, maybe some lettuce and cilantro, that it will all work well together.
Now I'm making the honey mustard chicken, which is very easy and doesn't require the food processor. I'm doing a 1/2 cup of stone ground mustard, a 1/2 cup of honey, a 1/2 cup of olive oil, 6 cloves of garlic minced, a teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano. Mix it up really well, and that's it. That's your marinade. Now I'm making some amazing green rice, and I'm gonna stick this in the freezer. I like it because it's a starch and sort of a salad in one, so I feel like it makes a great freezer meal. So into the food processor is going a whole bunch of stuff. We've got a bunch of cilantro, a ton of spinach, a shallot, 2 jalapeno peppers with the seeds removed, 4 cloves of garlic, 4 tablespoons of olive oil, and then we're going to process that up. All right, here are all the marinades we've made so far. We have the Instant Pot Korean beef tacos from Pinch of Yum, honey chipotle chicken skewers, also Pinch of Yum, amazing green rice, also Pinch of Yum, and honey mustard chicken thighs from Scratch Pantry. I'm gonna get the rice started and get that cooked while I process all the meat. So first you saute the rice in some olive oil, and that adds some nice crunch and flavor. And then you saute in all of the greens that we just processed up, and then you add in water and simmer it for 15 to 20 minutes. So here I have top sirloin. You can also do chuck roast. This is for the Korean beef tacos. I'm gonna cut them just a little bit. All right, that's gonna be one. Key is making only one hand be your dirty hand and then the other hand being your clean hand. Let's see if I can do that. I probably should have wrote on the bag before I did this. Note to self. This is Chipotle chicken. Chipotle chicken. Honey mustard chicken. I'm just gonna try and make them skinnier and smaller so that if I wanna put them in the air fryer, I can. I really like what the air fryer does to chicken. One will be like for air fryer and one will be for the grill. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would just cut all the chicken at once, but my cutting board was just running out of room, so I'm just gonna do it this way, one at a time. It definitely saved time if I just cut all the chicken all at once. We're learning as we go here. That is my rice timer. I'm gonna go check on that. Now I'm just sealing up the bags, and I think it's pretty important to try and mix the sauce around inside the bag so it gets on all sides of the meat, so no part of the meat is left out from the marinade. For these meatballs, I need 2 pounds of ground turkey, and these packs come in more than 1 pound per pack, so I'm taking some of it out to save for later for another time. Now I'm adding in a cup of ricotta cheese, which uses up the last of the ricotta. A cup of panko breadcrumbs, which I'm so glad I had because I forgot it at the store, and then add in 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And then you need a cup of Parmesan cheese. I only had Pecorino Romano at this point, so I'm using that, and I'm blending it up in the Vitamix to get a powdered cheese, and then I'll add that. Then I'm just mixing that up really well with my hands, and I'm gonna bake it at 400 for 20 to 25 minutes. Make sure you grease the pan with olive oil because these will stick. I ended up using parchment paper on the second round of meatballs. I have a lot of meat here, so I'm gonna have to do this in 2 batches. So the first pan is going in the oven. Now my first pan of meatballs is out, and I'm just gonna transfer that to a tray. As you can see, they were sticking a bit, not a big deal. Now I'm just getting my second tray of meatballs into the oven. You can freeze these meatballs on their own and then heat them up in some marinara sauce and then serve it over some pasta or next to some crusty bread. I have recently become obsessed with these blueberry RX bars, and so I found a copycat recipe and I've altered it a bit, and I'm gonna see if I can replicate it.
So there's like a loud noise coming from the food processor, so I think there's like a pit or something in here that I need to get rid of. So I have to like sort through this now. This was supposed to be easy. Come on, where are you? Found it. There's a pit. Let's try this again. Okay, so now I'm gonna put in a half cup of almonds, and I'm just gonna pulse them a little bit. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna add in the protein powder. So this is just egg white powder, which is what adds all the protein to these RX bars. I've never done this before, so I don't really know how it's gonna work, but we'll find out. Decided that I'm gonna add a little bit of water and vanilla extract because it's looking fairly dry right now, and hopefully that will help it along. So let me add the vanilla first. Try and eyeball about a teaspoon, maybe less, about a half teaspoon. And now I'm gonna add the water as it's running. All right, starting to come together into a really good texture. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna add the almonds and the blueberries in a second. I don't want the almonds to get completely obliterated. I want like little chunks because that's exactly how the RX bars are. All right, I'm not gonna go crazy with this because I don't wanna ruin what I have here. And now I'm gonna add in all of these blueberries. They're gonna make them super delicious. Oh, it smells so good. So you actually can dehydrate your own blueberries, which I have done before, and they turn out so good. I get those little small wild blueberries from Costco, and you can dry them out in the oven at a low temperature. It takes a long time. I can't remember exactly, but one of these days I'll do that again. I just didn't think I could do it today. It's like not mixing. This was supposed to be my easy one. You do have to be really careful when you reach into your food processor because the blade will definitely cut you. I have learned that from experience. All right, it's perfect now. Beautiful. Let's try it. Really good. It's really, really similar to the RX bar. I really, really like it, so very pleased. Now I'm just pressing down my blueberry RX bars. I first tried to press it down with my hands and then a measuring cup, but the winner ended up being parchment paper. So if you put parchment paper on it, you can easily smooth down the surface. And I will cut those up into little bars later. And now I'm just gonna cut up my, what are these called? Z bars, no. RX bars. I'm gonna cut my RX bars up. These have a lot of protein in them. So they're also a little bit sticky. I wasn't sure how to package them, but I decided just to keep them loose and to put some parchment paper between the layers and keep them in the refrigerator for now, because I think those will last. So I'm salting and peppering this chicken and putting it into my slow cooker, which has a saute function. And I'm gonna sear it well on both sides. I have some olive oil in that pan. I'm making a little spice mixture here. I have 2 teaspoons of cumin, a teaspoon of oregano, a teaspoon of ground coriander, half a teaspoon of pepper, and a teaspoon of salt. Mix that up. And that's gonna go in after we cook the veggies. So once the chicken has been browned well on both sides, you can take it out. It doesn't need to be fully cooked. We're gonna cook it more later. And then we're gonna throw the veggies into the pan and just get them all sauteed up. This recipe for white chicken chili is on my blog. I'll leave the link in the description. I'm gonna add some salt to these veggies and let them sweat it out for a minute. And for the onions, I'm using purple onions because that's just what I had in the garden. So now I'm adding some garlic and adding those seasonings on top, letting those flavors kind of bloom and develop. Now I'm adding in a can of green chilies. And then I have about 4 to 6 cups of bone broth or chicken broth or stock, whatever you have. And now I'm adding the chicken back in, and I'm gonna set this to low for 3 hours. And now I will get my kitchen cleaned up and my cutting board scrubbed. Now to my white chicken chili, I'm adding a can of white cannellini beans. The other can of beans I'm gonna reserve, and we'll get to that in a minute. I'm adding a cup of frozen corn to the chili, and now removing the chicken. I'm gonna shred the chicken up and then put it back into the chili. Add a bit of broth to those beans and use an immersion blender to turn this into a creamy base. And this is what's gonna make your white chicken chili creamy. And I love this because there's no dairy in it, so you can freeze it like this. So now this is done, I'm just gonna let it cool. My white chicken chili has now cooled down. I'm putting it in a freezer bag. I used a flour canister to support my bag as I poured it in because that just seemed to be the right size. My sister is getting half of this, and I'll save the other half for our family. I'm gonna put the beans and the leftover broth back away. I'm able to freeze those beans for future recipes. And then this is the chili I'm putting away for our family. This next part was just to use up some corn tortillas that we had, so I cut them up into a chip shape, tossed them in some grapeseed oil, and then salted them and baked them at 375 for 15 to 20 minutes, and they are nice little crunchy chips. And while that is going on, you can prep all of your toppings. We like to serve chili with rice, so I cooked this in some bone broth, and I feel like if you serve it with rice, it stretches the meal a little bit further. We did for toppings sour cream, cheese, cilantro, avocado, and some tortilla chips. You can also just keep it simple and just do sour cream and cheese, but we had all these items on hand. This was a delicious meal, and thank you so much for watching. I've added my blog link in the description, which has all of the recipes for this. I
have a 2-pack of chuck roast here. It's about 7 pounds, and I'm gonna chop it up into stew meat portions. I'm seasoning it really well on both sides with salt and pepper. I did about 3 teaspoons of salt and pepper.
So I decided that I'm gonna sear the meat in 2 pots, the Instant Pot and my Dutch oven, so I can speed up this process. And I don't mind if there's some of this meat flavor in the chili. That's all good in my opinion.
So in case that wasn't clear, I'm searing some of this chuck roast meat for the beef stroganoff. That's what I'm making right now. And I'm searing it in the Instant Pot and in my Dutch oven. And later I'm gonna make chili in that Dutch oven. So any of the flavors left over from this meat will actually add to the chili and make it better. So I'm just doing this in batches here. It was quite a hot and steamy kitchen while I was doing this. So I had my vent fan going, I had the window open, and just getting through it. I needed more onions for this recipe, so I paid a visit to my garden and pulled up quite a few. I'm gonna wash those and chop them all up, and I think I will end up using all of them. For the beef stroganoff, we're just cutting these into slices. You need 2 onions, so I'm doing about 4 smaller ones. Straight into the pot with all of that grease left over, I'm going to saute these onions until they look browned a little bit. Now I'm adding 4 cloves of minced garlic. I'm sprinkling the onions with a 1/4 cup of freshly milled flour and adding in a 1/2 cup of Dijon mustard. This will create a thick, gluey base for your sauce, and then you're gonna add in the broth. So it will hopefully become a thick sauce. But because I'm cooking this in the Instant Pot, I was kind of altering the recipe and following the recipe notes to modify for the Instant Pot. So it was a little bit tricky. I also took some of that broth out because I wanted to save it for the next recipe and just added in some water instead. But this recipe is from Recipe Tin Eats. It's her slow cooker beef stroganoff recipe modified for the Instant Pot. So it's kind of an adventure here as we're making this. I've left the link in the description for this recipe, but this is going to cook now in the Instant Pot. I'm doing 50 minutes because I have so much meat in there. I learned this trick from America's Test Kitchen to speed up the process of browning mushrooms. We're gonna release a lot of the juices by placing them in a glass bowl, covering it with plastic wrap and microwaving it for a few minutes. Now you can see all the juice that has been released from the mushrooms. This is gonna help you when you're sauteing the mushrooms so that you don't have to use as much oil, because normally mushrooms just absorb up all the oil so quickly and you have to keep adding more. So we've kind of gotten the steaming process out of the way, and now I added about 3 tablespoons of butter to the pan and I'm browning those mushrooms. I'm adding in 3 cloves of garlic. Actually, I think I did 6 cloves of garlic. I also added a teaspoon of salt and pepper, and I'm just browning these. Instead of cooking them in the Instant Pot, these are gonna have a lot of flavor and not be as mushy, and hopefully hold up better when we freeze them, because this is gonna get mixed in with the beef stroganoff sauce.
All right, mushrooms are done. I'm gonna let those cool.
Turning back to my beef stroganoff, I'm trying to skim off some of the fat on the top. It just seemed like there was too much grease, so I'm getting rid of that.
So I'm just gonna simmer this in the Instant Pot a little bit because the sauce is so liquidy and I wanna thicken it up a little bit. And I had a feeling that would be an issue making it in the Instant Pot. It's really better off making it on the stove, but it will still work out. In the end, after I package this up, when you reheat it, you want to add sour cream and also a cornstarch and water mixture and warm it up slowly, and that will thicken the sauce. So that's what I'm going to tell my sister. I don't like sending this to her in this state, but I really can't add sour cream to this until after it's been frozen, because otherwise the sour cream will curdle.
I'm separating the beef stroganoff into 2 pans. I'm going to keep one pan for my family and stick it in the freezer, and then the other one will go to my sister for her freezer. And when you warm these up, you want to thaw them out in the fridge overnight and then gently warm them up on the stovetop. And then add in a 1.5 cups of sour cream and a cornstarch slurry. And I plan to serve these with egg noodles.
Mixing some arrowroot powder with some water to make a slurry, and just a little bit, not even a full tablespoon, and that will thicken up this sauce just a little bit. And then I'm gonna add sour cream. You want to do about 1.5 cups of sour cream. This is done. Go ahead and put this in here. Just gonna add a little bit of butter to this so it doesn't stick.
So here is a delicious dinner.
Oh, that looks so amazing.
The soft dinner rolls were a hit. The only critique I have is that they were a little sour, so my kitchen is warm, so next time I won't ferment them quite as long. This makes an amazing, comforting family meal, and I love it when I know I have some in the freezer. Now I'm milling 3 cups of hard red wheat berries to make some freshly milled flour for some delicious muffins I'm about to make. We love using freshly milled flour for lots of different baked goods, and they especially work really well for muffins. And I love this recipe. I've made it before, but I'm gonna make it again, and this time I'm doing a double batch. It's just too good to not share. I love the different flavors. It reminds me of fall. First, I'm gonna melt a cup of butter. After mixing up that batter, you're going to add in 2 cups of unsweetened applesauce and a 1.5 cups of shredded carrots and just fold those in. This is a great breakfast or snack muffin, and you can reduce the amount of honey if you'd like to lessen the amount of sugar in this. I've done that before and it's still really good, but this is the original recipe and it's quite delicious. You're going to bake this at 350 for 22 to 25 minutes. And I seem to have misplaced one of my muffin trays, and so I'm going to have to do all of my muffins today in batches. My first batch of muffins are done, so now I'm going to get the next one in there. First, I need to free up my muffin tray. I'm gonna flash freeze these muffins and then stick them all in a bag, and we can grab them as needed when we want one. This recipe is from Joshua Weissman. He did a whole video on this recipe, so I'm trying to follow his instructions. I have a lot of meat here, so I'm searing it in 2 batches. And then I have 2 pounds of cherry tomatoes that I'm roasting. For the meat, you want to sear it well on all sides. That middle piece was sticking still. That's how you know that it needs more time. It should easily pull off the pan. So you want a nice crust on all sides of the meat. I used bone marrow when I was cooking this, so there was a lot of splattering, but I had some extra bone marrow from when I made broth a while back, and so I really just wanted to use it, and it adds lots of good flavor. Well, I'm still working on my beef ragu. I'm pulling out the mirepoix that I made yesterday. I was planning on making this recipe yesterday, but decided it would be better, since this is sort of a special recipe, to make it today. And we are actually gonna have it for dinner, and I'm just gonna freeze the leftovers.
This one's a little longer. All right, we got some time. I just remembered that these were in the oven, and it's a good thing because they were just about overly cooked. I think this will actually be perfect though.
Now I'm adding a bunch of minced garlic to the sauteed veggies, and then I'm adding 4 tablespoons of tomato paste. Then I'm scooping up all those roasted tomatoes and plopping them in the pan. And then for all of the flavor, I'm adding balsamic vinegar, red wine, and bone broth. I'm doing a double batch, so this pot looks really full, but ideally a single batch would work better. Then you're going to take your whole pot and put it in an oven at 250 or 275 for 3.5 to 4 hours. When it's cool, shred the meat and freeze it in 2 bags and serve it over pasta.
Just having a moment here. You want to show me your fork?
Yeah.
All right. So this is what the kids have been up to while I've been cooking. They have been making a fort. Ooh, that looks good.
I didn't want people leaning.
Let's see it.
Leaning on it and then falling. It's technically just this.
Oh my goodness.
And then?
Oh, and there's like another room over there. Really cool.
And then you tighten it down.
Yeah.
And then get out.
We'll pick it up again tomorrow, right, boys?
Yeah.
They'll work on their fort, and I'll work on making lots of food.
Yeah.
Grabbing the ingredients I need for chicken enchiladas. I'm going to cook some chicken in the Instant Pot and shred it. This recipe is also on my blog and it's linked in the description. I shredded some chicken and now I'm sauteing some onions in a large saute pan. My garage fridge is almost empty now, just grabbing some shredded cheese, which I'll need for these enchiladas. Once again, this is a double batch. I'm adding 2 8-ounce cans of tomato sauce and 2 4-ounce cans of green chilies. Sometimes I add a can of diced tomatoes as well, but this time I did not, and I like how it turned out. I also added a little bit of chili powder and cumin to the shredded chicken, and then I started adding in about 2 cups of shredded cheeses. You can also add some beans to this if you like. I didn't have any on hand and I wasn't prepared to cook dry beans today, so I just went with that. I had some leftover shredded chicken, so I'm putting that in a container which we can use throughout the week for various meals. And now I'm going to assemble my enchiladas. Very self-explanatory, just put some meat in the tortilla and roll it up. I have some delicious homemade enchilada sauce that I made a couple of days ago, and I had it in the fridge, and I'm gonna use the rest of that for these freezer enchiladas. I made these differently in my last video because I didn't have tomato sauce, so this is a little more true to the recipe. To bake these from frozen, I would put them out on the counter a few hours before dinner to let them thaw a little bit, and then bake it covered with foil at 350 for about 45 minutes, then uncover it and let it keep baking until the enchiladas look totally cooked through and golden and crispy. These can take a while to finish cooking, so just make sure you plan ahead. It's very, very simple. This recipe is from Pioneer Woman, and I'm going to start by just browning some meat with some onions. At this point, I realized I needed more meat. I forgot I was doubling it, and so I needed 2 pounds of ground beef. So instead, I just pulled out the ground turkey that I had just stuck in the freezer. Now I'm just adding 4 of those small 8-ounce cans of tomato sauce to this meat, as well as some fresh pepper, about a half teaspoon, and then just let it simmer for a bit. While I'm working in the kitchen, my kids are all just playing around the house, and it makes my mama heart so happy to see it. I'm just finishing up the pasta for the sour cream noodle bake. I was trying to ladle out the pasta and not drain it completely, but it didn't work out. So I ended up draining it, and I'm gonna have to heat up another pot of water for the next thing that I'm doing. But into this pasta, I'm adding a cup of sour cream into each tray, then a cup and a half of cottage cheese into each tray, and then you can just mix that up, and then I will pour the meat mixture into each tray, splitting it in half. Now keep in mind, I'm sharing with you what I'm doing today, but not all of the amounts are exact according to the recipes, so just follow the links in the description if you want to make any of these dishes.
I'm gonna just scoop out the rest of this cottage cheese because there was only a little bit left, and why not? So here we have the sour cream and noodle bake. This is from Pioneer Woman. I'm just gonna cover it with cheese.
To bake this from frozen, I would take it out of the freezer if you know you're planning to make it for dinner either the night before and stick it in the fridge, or that morning and just let it thaw on the counter until dinner time, and then bake it in the oven covered with foil at 350 for about 45 minutes. It can take a while to heat these frozen dishes all the way through, so you might want to test it to make sure it's warm in the middle, and then uncover it and let the top turn nice and golden and crispy. This can take 15 to 20 minutes or more.
This is great served with rice and broccoli. I'm making doubles of everything, and I am going to take half of it to my sister-in-law who just had a baby. So I'm gonna put these together, and then my mom and my sister are going over to her house today, and they are gonna deliver these for me.
Okay, for this recipe, I'm making a marinade, and I'm just gonna pour it over the chicken. So I have a half cup of soy sauce. I'm adding a whole can of tomato paste, 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, a half cup of honey, a tablespoon of water, and at this point I'm realizing my jar is definitely not big enough. Six tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 3 teaspoons of sriracha, 6 cloves of garlic. I also forgot to double this part. Here is the printed recipe in case you want to screenshot this for your record so you can remember, but I was doubling this. I didn't get all the measurements exact, and that's okay. I'm just gonna shake it all up. I also forgot the pepper, so I'm adding that in. Shake it all up and then just add it to the 2 bags of chicken. This is another very simple chicken taco recipe that you can make in your slow cooker. I got the recipe from the Pinch of Yum blog, which is one of my favorite food blogs. I've been following her for years, but I left all the links in the description below. So I did 4 cloves of garlic, and once again, I forgot to double this.
I love sandwiches. I love your bread.
Good. I'm glad.
Then you want to chop up 2 to 4 chipotle peppers in adobo sauce, and then split that up between the 2 bags. Next, you're going to add a chopped onion in each bag.
I have to say, I think the prep the night before is truly game-changing when it comes to freezer meal prep days. This has been so much more seamless so far than my last cooking day.
You're going to add a teaspoon of oregano in each bag, a half teaspoon of cumin in each bag,
Half teaspoon of salt.
a half teaspoon of salt in each bag,
Fire roasted tomatoes. Oh, these are not crushed. I wonder if I should crush them. I think I will.
That part isn't totally necessary, but I wanted to do it. Now you're going to add 3/4 cup of crushed fire roasted tomatoes into each bag. Finish it up with a tablespoon of olive oil into each bag, and then a 1/4 cup of chicken or beef stock in each bag. Next, just make sure you mix up all of those ingredients pretty well, seal the bags, and you can stick them in the freezer. And when you're ready to eat them, you can cook them in the slow cooker and serve them with tortillas and toppings for tacos. This meal is called a Life-Changing Beef Stew by Pinch of Yum, and I liked this recipe because there were so few ingredients in it and I just had to try it out. Instead of buying stew meat, I bought chuck roast and cut it up into chunks. This actually saves you a bit of money, and now I'm gonna chop up all the veggies. For this recipe, all you need to do is roughly chop up 6 whole carrots, 2 celery stalks, and a whole onion, and then you just add in some salt, sugar, and some tomato juice, which I've never used before. Okay, so into each bag, I'm doing 3 bags here because I had a lot of meat. I'm doing about 2 pounds of the beef, 1 whole onion, 2 stalks of celery, and 6 carrots. All of these are roughly chopped. However, I didn't have enough carrots, so for one of the bags, I did not add any carrots, and I just wrote on the bag to add carrots when I cooked it. And then you're gonna add in 2 teaspoons of salt into each bag, as well as a tablespoon of sugar into each bag, and then you're gonna finish it off with a 1/2 cup of tomato juice into each bag. So that is the whole recipe, and I've left the link in the description. So you essentially just dump all of this either in the slow cooker or the Instant Pot, and you can also finish it off in the oven. But the link in the description will give you all the details. I'm really excited to try this one out. Chewy, seedy granola bars. I posted this recipe on my blog and you guys love it, and so do I. You're gonna start off on the stove and melt a 1/4 cup of salted butter, brown sugar, and honey. We're gonna create a syrup. Keep the heat at medium-low so you don't burn anything, and then add in a pinch of salt and a teaspoon of cinnamon. And then once that gets nice and bubbly, you can turn off the heat and add in a tablespoon of almond butter. You can also sub out peanut butter or sunflower seed butter here. Then add in 4 tablespoons of your seeds of choice. I'm doing pumpkin seed and flaxseed here. Now add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. One and a half cups of rolled oats. Mix it up really well. You want the syrup to get all over everything so it's nice and sticky. This is how the granola bars are gonna hold together. Now add 2 cups of rice cereal. This is gonna add some nice crunch to your granola bars. Into a parchment-lined loaf pan, you're gonna scoop out all of the mixture and then press it down. You can use the parchment paper to fold it over itself and press it down. I'm also topping it with a sprinkle, about a 1/3 cup of chocolate chips. I'm using a large Pullman loaf pan and it's the perfect size for this recipe. I'm putting it in the freezer now just to let it harden up, and I will cut those up and wrap them up later. You guys might not remember these granola bars because it was about 40 minutes ago, so thank you for watching this far. If you have, please make these granola bars. They are so good. I promise everyone will love them. I'm packaging them up in a little bit of plastic wrap because it's just the most convenient for packing for school, and I store these in the refrigerator. They are so good when they're cold. They're nice and crunchy. This is a spicy turkey and lentil sloppy joe recipe. I found this from a food blog so many years ago. I don't even know if I can find it anymore, but I printed it out. You're gonna start by making a spice mix. Into a jar, you're gonna do 2 tablespoons of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of garlic powder, 1.5 tablespoons of smoked paprika, 1 tablespoon of dried basil, 1 tablespoon of dried oregano, 1 tablespoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of pepper, 1 teaspoon of celery seed, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. This is your spice mix. Normally this would last you more than 1 meal, but because I'm doubling this recipe, I'm gonna end up using this whole jar. Here is a visual of that recipe. If I can find a link to that food blog, I will leave it in the description. I am browning up 2 packs of ground turkey, which I believe is 3 pounds, and then I'm adding in 2 chopped onions. Now I'm adding 4 8-ounce cans of tomato sauce to this meat mixture.
I think this is gonna fit into here, but we will find out. Ideally, I would let this cool down completely before I put it in here, but my sister is actually hungry and she just got back from delivering food, and I'm gonna give her a little bit of this. So since it's all ready and everything else is in the freezer, so this is the one thing that's actually like ready to go.
I've added the lentils to this meat mixture. I'm just gonna combine it all. So this is sort of like a chili. I call it sloppy joes because you could serve it with a bun, although I feel like it could use a little bit more sauce to be sloppy joes. I actually really like to eat it just like this, like as a bowl of chili, or you could wrap it up in a tortilla. It's really however you want to serve it. It's a high protein meal, so I think it's just something nice to have on hand. And I really like the spice mixture in this. I think it has a really nice flavor. It's best to let your food cool down completely before adding it to a plastic bag and then press it down flat and freeze it like that. I was filming and things can be a little bit rushed when I'm filming, and so I didn't wait until it cooled completely, but do what I say, not what I do. Here is the recipe I'm making for dinner. It looks simple enough. I love the Wellness Mama cookbook because she has really simple recipes that are very healthy and nourishing. Since I couldn't find any roasted red peppers in the store, I just took one of the red peppers I have and I'm roasting it on the stove just like this until all the sides are a little bit charred, and then you just let it cool off before you cut into it.
All right, things are getting a little crazy in here, but into the Instant Pot, I'm gonna do 8 cloves of garlic crushed. I'm actually gonna do more because I realized that my meat is actually more than 3 pounds. or I think it is. And so I'm just gonna finish off the rest of this garlic that we peeled yesterday. Just trying to hurry up and get it in. We need to do 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning. 1, 2, and I'm gonna do an extra half. 2.5. I'm gonna do the rest of this onion. Done with that. Now my pepper has cooled down a little bit, so I'm going to cut it open. Just going to kind of roughly chop this and get it in there. It's still pretty hot. This recipe calls for a jar of roasted red peppers, which I couldn't find at the store. And I only have 1 red pepper. So this is what I did instead. I just roasted it on the stove. And ideally I would like to have more than 1 in here, but this is what we have today. Last but not least, we're gonna do 2 cups of bone broth, which I have over here. Gotta save these bones. I'm gonna put these bones in a bag and freeze them again because I can still use them again. But first I gotta sort through the veggies and stuff. All right, I need a measuring cup. Perfect. 1. Is that it? A hair. 2. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pressure cook this for, I don't know how long because the recipe is for the slow cooker. So I'm gonna try for, I think I'm gonna do 45 minutes. I know that's a long time, but I think that it's gonna need it to get nice and tender.
I cooked mine on the same day, but you could add all those ingredients to a freezer bag and then cook it in the Instant Pot later. Just make sure after you cook it, you temp the meat and let it rest, and then you're going to use an immersion blender to blend up all the veggies and the broth, and it creates sort of an Italian gravy.
Oh man, I was hoping it would be like fall apart tender, and it is not.
I always run around.
This is great served with baked sweet potatoes. To cook the potatoes, I pierce them first with a fork and then bake them at 425 for about 45 minutes. You know they're done when you see a syrupy liquid running out. We're starting off here with sourdough tortillas. This is my favorite recipe that I've tried. It's from the Perfect Loaf book, and I will also leave those details in the description. But basically, I prepped the dough last night, and it has been fermenting overnight. And then now I'm shaping them, and I'm going to allow them to rest and rise a little bit before I cook them. I'm also prepping a triple batch of protein bagels. I've never made these before, but I'm excited to try them out and make breakfast sandwiches with them.
Okay, so I'm making the protein bagels, but later tonight I'm also making another viral recipe. It is the cottage cheese pizza that I found, which is pretty much the same idea. You use cottage cheese and flour to make a crust. And so I'm going to put this cottage cheese in the bowl for the bagels, and then I'm gonna mix the other 2 cups of cottage cheese for the pizza later tonight. That way I only have to get this dirty once. All right, so for the cottage cheese pizza, 2 cups, which I think is gonna use up the entire container, which is really satisfying actually, to have the whole thing get used up. Yep. So all you do for these bagels is, let's see, I'm tripling it. So I'm doing 3 cups of cottage cheese and 3 cups of flour. And then I'm adding in some baking powder. All right, well, let's see what happens here. I'm like still figuring out the knobs. Lower. It looks cool.
To shape the dough, I'm separating it into 3 pieces since I did a triple batch, and then I'm cutting those into 4 equal pieces each, weighing them to about 80 grams, and then roll it out into a 6 to 8 inch rope shape and connect it to make your bagel. You're gonna wanna play with the dough a little bit because it's definitely a different feeling than your typical dough, and so just play with it and work with it until you can get it into the shape that you want.
So I just need to brush the tops of these with eggs, and then I'm gonna pop them in the oven at 375 for about 25 minutes or so. And if I'm being honest, I have very little faith that this recipe is gonna turn out. It just seems like really strange and odd, the dough. I just don't know if it's gonna work, but this recipe had like 200 5-star reviews and everyone was saying that it turned out so good and so amazing. So I'm just gonna trust the process here. I did use freshly milled flour, which of course, you know, that changes things a bit because the original recipe called for all-purpose flour. So I'm expecting, you know, different results, but hopefully we still get something that is edible and that I can make a breakfast sandwich out of, because that was kind of my goal for these. I wanted to make little like freezer breakfast sandwiches, and then my kids could just grab those in the morning, because I have the hardest time with breakfast. I'll cook dinner and I'll cook all sorts of things, but for some reason I just cannot get breakfast going for my kids. So they end up eating like bread with stuff on it, or just like really basic stuff. And I kind of feel like they need, or they deserve better, and that they need more protein in the morning.
These bagels are going right into the oven at 375 for 25 to 30 minutes, and now I'm moving on to making the tortillas. I recently got a tortilla press, and you're not supposed to use it in the way that I'm about to show you, but I've seen a lot of people doing it anyway, so just, you know, use it at your own discretion. But it's a cast iron tortilla press, and so I'm putting it on the stove and getting it nice and hot and just pressing the tortillas into it, and it basically cooks it immediately. It's not perfect, and this was my first time doing this, and so I'm still playing around with the best way to cook the tortilla in the most efficient way. I ended up taking out my other cast iron pan so that I could sort of finish off the tops a little bit more in the cast iron pan. So I just kind of quickly went from one to the other, and then later I decided to turn the heat off and instead line it with parchment paper because it was beginning to stick a little bit, and then cook it on the cast iron pan. So that worked out pretty well too. I think if you just warm up the tortilla press a little bit, it helps to really flatten out the dough, and then you can cook it really quickly on a steaming hot cast iron pan. So I've done a few different things here. I'm testing things out to see what will work the best, because if I can get efficient and fast with making tortillas, that would just be amazing. My bagels are finished and they look pretty good.
Here are my tortillas. We've got a big bunch of them. I tried out a couple different techniques of making these. I'm still kind of trying to figure out my tortilla game. I just got that tortilla press after some of you told me that I needed it. So I'm pleased so far with the results. I do think there's a learning curve in making tortillas, and I'm gonna keep working on that. So these are gonna cool, and then they're gonna go in the freezer. And then these are cooling.
Surprisingly, these bagels turned out amazing. My whole family loved them.
Okay, so I don't know if this is necessary, but I read somewhere that you should put parchment paper in between your tortillas if you're freezing them, which seems like kind of a waste of parchment paper, but just in case, I'm gonna do it this time. I tried to cut them nice and small. This bag has holes in it. I was trying to reuse this bag. I used it before with bread, but I guess it's broken.
For the protein bagels, I cooked up some sausage patties and I'm gonna make breakfast sandwiches with that. Now I'm cooking up some eggs. I'm doing half of the breakfast sandwiches with egg and sausage and cheese, and the other half is gonna be just sausage and cheese. I can already tell you, because it's been a few days since I recorded this, that these breakfast sandwiches are coming in handy and my kids are loving them. It's been especially helpful for my oldest daughter, who has a hard time getting out the door and getting ready in the morning because she's so tired. She's been just grabbing these for her lunches. So I'm glad I made them, and I'm gonna keep making them because they are definitely a hit in our house now. I'm just gonna wrap them all up in some plastic wrap, and I'm separating out the sausage and cheese versions away from the sausage, egg, and cheese versions. I have one little boy who's picky about eggs, so just to make it easier, I'll go ahead and separate them out. But these are going in the freezer, and it was a very productive morning. I'm feeling really proud of myself, very accomplished, really glad I took the time to put forth the effort and to get it done. I'm putting the extra sausage patties in the fridge. We're gonna eat that throughout the week. And then the ground sausage I'm putting in a container to go into the freezer, which I'll be using on Easter morning. For all the recipes I make today, I'm doing a double batch, so I'm feeding both my sister's family and my family. This is one of the first beef stews I learned to make, and this is also how I discovered how delicious homemade food can be. This recipe is from Pioneer Woman. It's one of the first blogs I started following after I got married and learned a lot of my cooking basics from there. I'm starting with 4 pounds of stew meat. I patted it dry, seasoned it well on both sides with salt and pepper, and now I'm searing the meat on all sides in some oil and butter. And since I have a lot of meat, this is gonna take me a minute. You wanna space the meat out so that it browns evenly and has room to breathe. As the meat finishes, I put it in this large stainless steel bowl, and I'm gonna set that aside. And while that's going on, I'm gonna strain out my bone broth. I made this last night so that I would have it ready for today. All I did was fill up an Instant Pot with some beef bones and some water, and then I set it to high pressure for 4 hours. Just a very simple bone broth to have on hand for the soups and stews that I'll be making in this video. I have a collection of small onions here that I have peeled and washed, and now I'm just gonna chop them up. These are all from my garden, so I have a couple of different varieties, and none of them are huge. I was kind of a lazy gardener this year. You can always go back and look at my spring garden video. I just sort of planted them in the ground without doing a lot of prep work. And we definitely got onions. They're not perfect, they're not huge, but we've been using them, and I'll be using them a lot in this video. So you're gonna need 2 large onions for a double batch. And as usual, I'm gonna use a lot of garlic. I'm using 6 cloves here. Now that the meat is finished, you can add those onions to the pot and saute them for a few minutes. You can add a little extra oil if the pan is dry. I usually like to add a pinch of salt to my onions anytime I'm sauteing them. I added a little bit of pepper too. It just helps to soften them up and break them down. And I'm gonna sweat these for a few minutes. So I'm gonna put the lid on this pan And then I'll come back to it and add the garlic now. I just don't want to burn the garlic, that's why I don't add it at the same time as the onions. There's so much flavor now at the bottom of this pot that has sort of come up and worked its way into the onions. This stew is going to be so hearty, so comforting, so delicious. It's amazing to me how you just need a few simple ingredients to make quite a delicious meal. It reminds me of that book, Stone Soup. So for the flavor enhancement here, we're doing 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, except I'm doubling it, so I'm actually doing 4 tablespoons here. And now I'm adding 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, and that really adds a huge boost of flavor. And that's basically it. We will be adding some paprika, but those are the 3 flavor boosters, I should say, that make this stew taste the way that it tastes. So I added all that meat back in, and now I'm just covering it with bone broth. I believe it was about 8 cups that I used here. Here goes in a teaspoon of smoked paprika. You can also just use regular paprika. Also a teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna mix this up and let this simmer down. And later I'm gonna add carrots and potatoes, but I want that meat to get really tender first. I'm also adding a tablespoon of sugar. That's going to kind of round out the flavor here. Now that I've got it to a boil, I'm turning off the heat, putting it into a 300-degree oven so that it can slowly cook throughout the day.
The same thing. What happened at school? I chronically overdo it on vegetables every time I make stew because I just feel like everything cooks down, and so it's just a great opportunity to get as many veggies in as you can. So I did a lot of carrots. I think you're only supposed to do 4 whole carrots if you're doing a single batch, and I did a double batch, and I don't know how much I did, but this seems like a lot. Stew looks so good. I'm just gonna add in the carrots and the potatoes and then put the lid on and let it go for another maybe hour.
I'm really proud of these potatoes that I grew. You can go back and watch my spring garden video if you want to see that process, but some things have done really well in my yard, some things not so much, but every year I learn and grow, and I really enjoy the process of growing some food, even if it's not all of our food, but just a little bit of it. Between the potatoes that I grew in my garden and the bone broth that I made from bones, which are normally a throwaway ingredient, it feels like a lot of this soup is essentially free, and I just had to buy the stew meat.
I'm gonna add a little bit of white wine vinegar to this stew. I think it just needs a little bit of something, and I'm hoping that will do the trick.
The original recipe called for adding a can of beer, and I just never have that. And so adding some white wine vinegar kind of does the trick. And now topping it with some bone broth now because we love the broth. And it was a little bit on the salty side, so that fixed it up.
Incorporate this without destroying these potatoes. I'm gonna try this. Perfect. Wow, that is so good. I can't tell you how pleased I am with this stew. It is so delicious. It's perfect. I'm gonna turn off the heat now. And just let that cool a bit. I have my barbecue sauce that's done. Cookies are cooling. And now we're just gonna serve it up.
make this a freezer meal, I would make the stew without the carrots and potatoes. I would also not top it off with extra broth. Instead, I would keep it light on the liquid, and then I would heat it up in the slow cooker with the potatoes and carrots, and then you can add extra broth as it's cooking, as it's needed. In this case, my stew was completely finished, so I just kept it in the fridge and ate it throughout the week. But to make it a freezer meal, it's pretty easy to adapt, and it should be quite delicious. This is another quick and easy recipe. You're going to start with a ½ cup of creamy peanut butter and then a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Add in 2 tablespoons of chia seeds and 2 tablespoons of my favorite protein powder. This is Clean Simple Eats Simply Vanilla flavor. Then add in 2½ tablespoons of ground flaxseed and then mix that up. Into that, we're going to add 1 1/4 cups of rolled oats, and then of course a sprinkle of chocolate chips. You're going to shape these into little bite-sized balls and then store them in the freezer. They make a great little snack. My daughter says these taste like chocolate peanut butter cups and they have protein in them, so I'm happy with that. I thought I would start it off with a very fall-esque slow cooker black bean, pumpkin, and turkey chili. I'm going to get this going in my slow cooker and let it cook throughout the day while I work on everything else. This recipe is from Ambitious Kitchen. I'm going to be doubling this recipe, so I have 2 jalapenos here and I'm going to chop that up. I chose to do a combination of ground beef and ground turkey for this chili, and I'm pulling my garlic out of the freezer and transferring it to a container, and I'll add some of that to the slow cooker along with my jalapenos. I'm also adding 2 diced onions. I have my phone propped up and the ReciMe app open to help me as I'm going through all the recipes today. Since there are a lot of spices in this chili, I'm just going to add the spices on the screen here. Just keep in mind that I will be doubling this. Now I'm adding 4 tablespoons of maple syrup to sweeten it up, and 2 28-ounce cans of crushed tomatoes and 2 cans of pumpkin puree.
And
Alright, now I'm adding what is equivalent to 2 cans of beans. Yes. So now I'm just gonna let this slow cook over the next couple hours while I get to everything else.
I thought this recipe sounded fun. This is from Pinch of Yum. And I like that it uses a lot of healthy ingredients and that you can just throw it in the Instant Pot and have a quick dinner. So I'm gonna throw all of the ingredients in 2 plastic bags. I divided 1 whole head of cauliflower between the 2 bags.
All right, so I have some butternut squash from my garden that I already chopped up. I'm not sure if this is enough, but I'm gonna first see, and then if I need to cut more, I have this one that I can do. So I need 2 cups per bag.
that still tastes flavor.
Yay, I have enough. One less thing to do.
Into each bag, add half of an onion diced, 3 cloves of minced garlic into each bag, 2 tablespoons of red curry paste into each bag. Add a can of diced tomatoes into each bag. And a can of coconut milk into each bag. Add 1.5 teaspoons of salt per bag and then a teaspoon of turmeric per bag. Now add a 1/2 cup of red lentils per bag, and that's it. You can cook it from frozen in the Instant Pot on high pressure for 6 minutes. Add 1 cup of liquid to the Instant Pot before you cook it, and I'm adding 1 cup of chicken broth to one of the bags as an experiment to see how it does if I freeze it with the liquid in there. So both of those turned out great when I cooked them up. I actually decided to add chickpeas, and I really enjoyed that. And then I served it over rice and topped it with some chili crunch and some yogurt. And it was just such a comforting lunch. I had this many days this week, and I enjoy having it on hand for lunch. I used all the rest of the onions, which is probably equal to 2 large onions. I'm just going to saute those up a little bit and then add, I think I have about 3 pounds of ground beef here. I need to get one of those tools that breaks up the ground beef while you're cooking it, but right now I'm just using a potato masher and a wooden spatula and just trying to keep that meat moving. I'm adding a teaspoon of salt, and once this is fully cooked, I'll start adding everything else. I did a large can of crushed tomatoes, and now I'm adding 2 cans of diced tomatoes. One of these was fire roasted tomatoes, and one was just regular. That's just what I had. And then I did about 2 large, maybe 3 tablespoons of tomato paste to thicken it up a little bit. For spices, I added 3 tablespoons of chili powder, a tablespoon of cumin, about 2 teaspoons of onion powder, a teaspoon of oregano, and then a teaspoon of smoked paprika, a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and a teaspoon of salt. You can just kind of wing the spices, but I think that is a good guideline for a good chili. I have made so many different chilies in my life, and sometimes I forget my favorite version because I make so many kinds, and I had to think back for a minute. And I think my favorite is when I add some Worcestershire sauce and brown sugar. So I did about a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, and then I added about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar because I'm doing a double batch. Now I'm adding 2 cans of red kidney beans, and then later I'll add the home-cooked pinto beans that I made, just because I don't want them to get too mushy. And now I'm adding those pinto beans to the chili. Since I'm almost done here, I'm going to turn off the heat soon, and that way those beans kind of hold their shape.
Now I'm gonna put my apron on and get going on the bread I'm planning on making. I'm gonna do a soft white sandwich bread, but I wanna do half freshly milled hard white wheat flour just for added nutritional benefit. And I decided to not do sourdough bread, but to do a yeasted bread because it's a more neutral flavor, because I'm making a bunch of Uncrustables. So I'm gonna put them in the freezer, and that's gonna be what we throw in our kids' lunches for a good bit here. I have a new apron. I actually made it out of a dress that I didn't really like, and so I just kind of cut into it and made a new apron. So I'm gonna hopefully keep my outfit clean. But let's get going here.
I'm making a tongzong, and that's basically a thick paste which uses some of the water, milk, and flour from the recipe. And so that's gonna go into the dough and hopefully keep it extra soft. I'm using a skillet here because this is a large batch. I'm feeling a bit ambitious here and doing 5 loaves. And so the skillet helps this process go a little faster than a saucepan.
This is gonna go in the bread. It's just milk, water, and flour. And you make a thick paste and you add it to the dough and it makes it soft. That's how we ended up with that really soft sandwich bread.
I'm pouring this into the mixer so it can cool faster, and while that's going on, I'll get the rest of my ingredients together. So I actually already milled my flour this morning in this bowl. I have about 1,000 grams, maybe less, of freshly milled hard white wheat flour, and then the rest of the flour I'll use is all-purpose. I got this recipe from Claire Soffitz over on her YouTube channel. She was making a copycat Uncrustables. And so I actually just took her recipe and multiplied it by 5 and then subbed out half hard white wheat flour. So it's kind of an experiment to see how it turns out. But I made this as a single loaf and it turned out beautifully. And so I do recommend you make it as a single loaf first and then maybe venture to doubling it and tripling it from there if you plan on doing batch cooking like I'm doing. So I'm just measuring out my flour now. I have never put this much flour in the mixer before. This is a ton. I feel like an actual baker, but we'll see how it goes. With this Uncrustables mixer, they say you're supposed to add the liquid ingredients first and then slowly add in the flour. So that's what I'm doing now. I was really having a hard time fitting all the ingredients in here and having it still mix properly. It had no problem turning. It's just the dough was going all over the place. This is a mess. The thing about freshly milled grains is you want to let them kind of sit and absorb the water a little bit before you knead it completely. So I'm gonna do that, but I'm starting to wonder why I decided to do 5 loaves of bread, because this is like a lot of dough and I don't even know if it's gonna work out, because I know when you do things in bulk, it kind of changes things. I've made this bread already once and it turned out perfect. So I just don't know how this is gonna turn out. I guess we'll just find out together. So I'm gonna cover this up and let it do its thing for a minute. I looked something up and discovered that the dough hook is better for large batches of dough. So I'm gonna use that. And I have a pretty good feeling that the dough is gonna climb up this thing. I'm fully expecting a big mess, but we're just gonna go with it and see what happens. My dough was having a hard time mixing. There's just too much in there, so I just kept shoving it down and just hoping that it would just develop as much gluten as it could. But in the future, I will be doing smaller batches of dough. This was just a little ambitious of me. A little bit improved, but not perfect. Regardless, I'm gonna take it out now and try to shape it. This dough is very tacky and a little too sticky, so I'm just gonna put some flour on the surface here and get it into a ball and let it rise in this container. Oh my gosh. This is a mess. It's not going so good. I tried my best with some flour and a dough scraper to get this dough into a more workable state, but it was definitely a frustrating process, and I was beginning to wonder if I needed to just give up on this altogether. It's not looking good. It's just not working. I decided to take half of the dough and put it back in the mixer to see if it could go for a while and develop more gluten, and just move on to another task while that's going. So I'm gonna plop it on the counter and try to shape it into loaves now. This is gonna rise for about 45 minutes and then I'll shape it into loaves. I'm going to grease these pans. The time has come to shape my sandwich loaves finally. I have 4 loaf pans, but 2 of those are larger, and so that's why I did a recipe for 5 loaves, but I'm only making 4. So basically you want to get it into a rectangle shape and apply some tension, tug on that dough and roll it up tightly. And just make sure that it fits into your loaf pan. You want the width of the rectangle to be about the width of your loaf pan. And then just cover that with some plastic wrap and let that rise until it reaches the top of the pan. This loaf was wider because the loaf pan is longer. I'm gonna set those near the oven so that they can rise, and once they are ready, I'll put those in.
I just peeked over and saw that my bread has completely risen over the edge of the pan, so it needs to go in the oven now. I have it at 350 and I'm gonna set a timer for 35 minutes and then just check it. And I want the internal temperature to be 190 degrees. Okay, so those are going in, but these need just a little bit longer to rise because I want this to go a little higher, close to the top of the pan. Oh no. It ripped.
I'm checking the internal temperature of my bread. It's not quite 190, so I'm gonna let it go a little bit longer.
Well, it is a new day today. I got a good night's sleep last night, a workout this morning, a fresh shower, and so I feel rejuvenated and ready to finish this task. So I'm going to start cutting up all this bread that I made and make some Uncrustables. This is kind of the moment of truth to see if the bread is soft enough to hold together when I shape them.
My bread was looking pretty good, usable, but not perfect. Obviously, I had a lot of issues while making this, but it still turned out, and any of the pieces that had holes in them, I just used for regular sandwiches or toast. We had a lot of bread to work with, so it was okay. I would say that's not bad for a day's work. Now I'm just gonna lay out all the good and usable pieces on the countertop, and we're gonna make our sandwiches right on the counter here.
All right, so we're gonna test out my method first and see how it goes. So I have a cup of water here, and then I have this Uncrustable cutter that I got off Amazon. I will link this in the description. So let's see how this goes. Uncrustables have peanut butter on both sides and then jelly in the middle. So that's what I'm gonna do. Maybe I should get a separate jelly knife. Probably should do that. The idea is that you seal it just like you would like a ravioli by adding some water along the edges.
So the first circle cuts the shape, and then the second one presses it down, seals it, and creates those nice edges.
Not bad.
So the main thing is just being careful that the bread doesn't break, especially when you're using freshly milled flour. It can tend to be a little bit more crumbly, but I think this does the job. I'm pretty pleased with this. It's obviously not perfect, but my kids really like it and it should store up nicely. So now we're just going to work through all of this bread and make as many Uncrustables as we can. I think I got better as time went on. This one turned out so perfect. Also, something to keep in mind, if you use a wider loaf pan, you won't get those little bits of crust on the sides of your Uncrustables. The pans I use are a 4x9, but if you use a 5x9, you might find that a little easier to work with. But I do like the thinner ones because there's less waste. Last but not least, we need to wrap these up. I'm using just a little square of plastic wrap to individually wrap each sandwich so that I can put it all into a single bag and then the kids can grab one and go.
So now I'm gonna put these in the freezer, and we're not gonna eat these right away because we have some extra bread. All of the scrap bread, like any of the bread that had too many holes in them, we're gonna use just for sandwiches throughout the week. And then I'm gonna save the Uncrustables for when we're, ready for something easy. So what's great about these is they go in the freezer and you can stick them right in your kid's lunchbox, and it can thaw in the lunchbox, and by lunchtime it's ready. So it's kind of the perfect lunchbox sandwich. I know it looks like I'm using a lot of plastic here, but all of these plastic bags are not even getting dirty, so I'm gonna reuse them. So all I have to do after this is pack away my granola bars and the Z bars, which I completely forgot about yesterday. I forgot I even made them. Yesterday was a blur, okay?
Next up, I'll be making copycat iced oatmeal cookie Z bars. My kids really like these Z bars, and this recipe had a lot of positive reviews, so I'm excited to try it. I love how it has a lot of different types of sweeteners, and it also uses dried figs. These are just some ingredients that I don't use often, and so I was so curious how this would turn out. First, you pulse all these ingredients together until they are fairly smooth. Then you open it up and add 1 more cup of oats and pulse that just enough until you have a batter that has some texture. This isn't winning any aesthetics awards today, but just bear with me. So you're gonna put this on a parchment lined sheet pan and spread it out to about 1/2 inch thick. It does not need to cover the whole pan. I ended up greasing the back of this spatula with some coconut oil, and that really helped me to be able to spread it out. You just wanna try and get a pretty clean rectangle, but you can still shape it even after it has baked. You can kind of mold it a little bit. But just do the best that you can and then put it in the oven at 350 for 11 to 13 minutes. I'm just taking these Z bars out of the oven. They are looking good.
Drink this coffee and then on we go.
I'm gonna top the Z bars with an icing. I did 5 tablespoons of powdered sugar, a teaspoon of water, and a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And you can put this in a little Ziploc bag and snip the end off and kind of pipe on a zigzag shape, or you can just do what I'm doing and just kind of smear it on there. My Z bars have finished cooling, so I'm cutting them up into small little bars that I can stick in my kids' lunch boxes. And these turned out really good. I thought they were really tasty, and I love the texture, and the icing on top is a nice little treat. So I would say that these are a win. I'm just gonna package these up into a glass container with some parchment paper to separate the layers, and then my kids can just go into the freezer and grab 1 or 2 whenever they want. They work great from the freezer. They're not too hard, so they can pull them straight from the freezer and enjoy them, or pack them in their lunch for later. Off with soft sourdough dinner rolls. These are going to be delicious. You start by making a tongzang with 166 grams of whole milk and 41 grams of white flour, and then you mix those together and then just whisk them up on a stove at medium heat until it turns into a thick paste, and let that cool on a plate. We're going to use that in the dinner rolls, and it's going to help to keep them soft and delicious.
Time to get my apron on.
I fed my starter last night so I would have a lot for today, and I'm measuring out 193 grams of starter for this recipe. I'm adding 180 grams of water, 38 grams of sugar, 11 grams of sea salt, the sourdough starter, and then all of the tongzang, and then slowly add in the flour. As usual, I would say add a little bit less flour than you think you need if you're using freshly milled flour. So add it little by little, and if it's starting to look too dense, then stop. I made the mistake all day of adding the full amount of flour to every recipe, and I learned afterwards, I had an aha moment that I just need to do less, just less freshly milled flour, and I will have less problems. So now we're gonna let this dough sit and rest for an autolyse, and we'll come back to it and mix it again and start adding the butter. I have set the butter out on the counter so it is softened. You want to add 95 grams of unsalted butter. I only had salted, so I'm using that, and I didn't notice any difference. But at this moment, I had another aha moment, and I realized that anytime you're adding butter into a dough after the dough has already been mixed, which is common for brioche dough, the dough hook works better if you have an Anka mixer. So, this mixer is pretty new for me, and same with using freshly milled flour. So I am just making a lot of new things and experimenting a lot. So I'm learning a lot as I go. And I hope you are too, and I hope you're enjoying it. I've actually had my grain mill for a long time, about 10 years. My Nutri-Mill, which I love, I haven't had any problems with it, but I didn't use it as frequently for baking bread until I started to understand the health benefits behind it. I don't think I fully understand that earlier, so for me it was just fun. But now it's more important to me to use freshly milled grains as much as possible. My dinner rolls are starting the bulk fermentation, which will last a few hours. It's time for me to do my first shape and fold. You want to do this every 30 minutes for the first hour and a half or so. So you're going to do this 3 times. You're basically developing some structure in your dough. So you just want to stretch that gluten out, fold it, and then let it continue to ferment. I'm going back to my sourdough dinner rolls and giving them another stretch and fold. The sourdough dinner rolls will be next in the oven, so the dough is ready for shaping. I'm going to divide this up into about 16 little balls. Each dough ball will be about 70 grams, and you're going to make tight little ball shapes and then pack them in next to each other in the baking dish. Now this is going to rise for another hour or 2. These dinner rolls were a hit. The only critique I have is that they were a little bit sour, so I would let them ferment for less time on the counter, and that should fix it. I decided to add a little bit of honey butter just for fun.
Measure out my ingredients, which I'm going to do straight into the bowl.
I added 182 grams of whole milk and beaten eggs. That's about 4 eggs, 26 grams of sugar, 21 grams of water, and 10 grams of sea salt, and then 189 grams of sourdough starter. I actually read the recipe wrong and did 84 grams of water because I was reading the wrong part. So you'll see my dough is a little bit on the wetter side. And with the mixer on, I'm adding all of the flour that the recipe called for. And I did use freshly milled. I used the full amount, but because I had a little bit of extra water and a little bit of extra egg in this, the dough turned out nice and soft. So now, because my dough was pretty wet, I'm adding even more flour until it looks like a good consistency. It's still pretty wet. We're gonna let it sit and absorb that water. Now I'm going back to my hamburger buns because they're done with the autolyse, and I'm adding 182 grams of softened unsalted butter. I'm actually using salted butter because that's really usually all I ever have. But you decide how you want to go about that. So I'm just mixing it and kneading it for 10 to 15 minutes until the dough is smooth and elastic. This is going into a bulk fermentation container, and we'll go through the same series of stretch and folds that I've done for the dinner rolls. My burger bun dough is getting its first set of stretch and folds. This is gonna help develop the dough and the structure of it. My dough is finished fermenting and ready to be shaped. Each piece of dough will be 125 grams, and we're making larger bun shapes. This dough is softer to work with, which means it's gonna make a delicious burger bun, but it helps if you fold the little dough ball a couple of times and then apply tension and turn it into a round shape. So once I'm done with that, they're gonna rise. We're gonna cover those up. They need about another hour or two. I'm using that same egg wash now on the burger buns, and those will go in the oven next at 400 for about 20 minutes. These buns are great to have on hand. I love having frozen homemade buns in the freezer for nights when I want to make burgers. They're ready to go and I don't have to make any homemade bread that day. I try to do most of our bread homemade, so it's nice when I have it ready to go. I made turkey burgers on this night, and I just pulled the buns straight from the freezer and then warmed them up, and it was perfect.
And so I found a recipe from Generation Acres Farm. It is specific for freshly milled flour. So I'm going to use 5 cups of hard white wheat flour, and I already milled it right here. So I have pretty much everything out. It's a mess right now. And I'm gonna start right in the bowl. The bowl is still kind of messy from the previous thing. We're just gonna keep rolling with it. All right, so you start with 1.5 cups of warm, yeah, that's warm enough, I think. Yeah, warm water. The recipe calls for olive oil, but I'm gonna use coconut oil because I just don't love the olive oil that I have right now for baked goods. So I think coconut oil will work a little better. Now we're gonna start by adding 3 cups of flour, get that all blended together. I'm also gonna use some sunflower lecithin. This helps to soften the dough, especially when using freshly milled flour. I'm only doing a teaspoon. And also, because I have it, I'm gonna add dry malt diastatic powder, which is kind of a known ingredient to include in bagels. And I'm gonna just do 1 teaspoon. It helps with the rising and structure of the bagel. It also adds a nice flavor. And then slowly add the rest of the flour. We're gonna use about 5 cups total.
Now I've got the mixer back on and I'm trying to develop that gluten. And I reached out to Kristen over at Generation Acres Farm for some tips. And she said, try not using as much flour. With freshly milled flour, you really want to watch it. And when you feel like the dough is the right consistency, just stop. Stop adding flour and it will be a lot easier.
So bagel dough is very dense, but every recipe for bagels I've ever done, the dough has always been really dense. So I'm hoping I am on the right path here.
My bagel dough is going on the counter with everything else to rise. My bagel dough rose quickly, and so it's ready to be shaped. It's nice when you can have a recipe that just uses yeast because it goes so quickly. I'm so used to sourdough where things have to take hours and hours. So now I'm just shaping my bagels. By now I feel like I'm a pro at shaping bagels, and I'm feeling much more confident this time around. But this is my method for shaping bagels. You kind of tightly roll it up into a rope shape, and then roll it out till it's about 12 inches long, depending on the thickness of your bagel. And then attach it like this, turn it around on the other side of your hand, and then roll it back and forth to seal the edges there. And there you have it. After shaping these, they only need about 10 to 15 minutes to rest and rise. So while that's happening, I'm gonna fill up a pot of water and get that boiling and turn on the oven. I'm adding a couple tablespoons of honey and barley malt syrup to the water. This will help the bagels to become sweeter and softer. These are already looking so much better than the first round of bagels, and so I'm boiling them about 30 seconds on each side. Be careful not to splash boiling water on yourself when you add these in and when you flip them. You're going to bake these at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes until golden brown. My bagels are finished.
They're sweet and they're chewy, but they're still soft enough. And I think once we toast them and put some toppings on it, everyone's gonna be very happy with these. So yay!
I'm very pleased with how the bagels turned out. They were so yummy. I ended up eating a lot of them, and I never eat bagels. So now I want to make them not only for my husband, but also for me, and my kids love them too. So my next variation of these is going to be blueberry bagels. So yeah, I'm just really excited to have a recipe that I can depend on using freshly milled flour. First, I'm doing 3/4 cup of milk or 180 grams, a tablespoon of white vinegar, and a teaspoon of salt. Mix that up, and you're gonna microwave that for 1 minute. In this bowl, I have 240 grams of freshly milled flour. I did half hard white wheat and half kamut, and now I'm adding in 1.5 teaspoons of a good quality baking powder. Mix that up, and then drizzle in a tablespoon of olive oil, and with a fork, mix that up to form some crumbly flour, and then pour in the milk. It's okay if the milk is a little bit clumpy or oddly textured because we microwaved it with the vinegar. That's okay and normal. Mix that all up just to get it combined, and then you're gonna cover it up and let it rest for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, put some flour on that surface and knead it until it is mostly a smooth ball, and then add it back into an oiled bowl and coat the dough ball with oil. I used olive oil here. Then cover it up and let it rest for another 10 minutes. Now you are ready to divide and shape. So I'm dividing them into 10 equal pieces, and then you want to form them into tight little dough balls and then let them rest for about 10 minutes. During that time, you can start heating up your hot cast iron skillet and get a plate with a towel ready for the cooking process. The process of making tortillas can be tedious, but it's really quite simple. You just want your cast iron skillet to be nice and hot, and it only takes about 30 seconds per side, maybe a little bit longer, and your tortilla is cooked. So I like to try to make these and then have some in the freezer, but if I don't have any made, I will buy a batch from the store and use that. But it's great when we can use freshly milled flour with our tortillas. This is another meatless meal that I really enjoy in the fall. It's very hearty and full of flavor. And I'm gonna put all the ingredients in a gallon bag and freeze it. And then I'll just put it in the slow cooker on low and let it all slowly cook. This meal is especially delicious with some homemade bread, and the recipe is on my blog, but I'm going to tell you what to put into each bag. So you want to do 1 whole sweet potato diced, and then a whole onion diced, and then 3 to 4 ribs of celery diced, and then 3 to 4 whole carrots diced. Then you're going to add 16 ounces of chopped mushrooms to the bag and a 14-ounce package of lentils rinsed. Then you'll add a can of diced tomatoes and 2 tablespoons of tomato paste per bag. And for the seasonings, I did 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, a half teaspoon of pepper, and a teaspoon of salt. I'm adding just a little bit of chicken broth here, about 2 cups per bag. But when you cook it, you're gonna wanna add 2 to 3 more cups of liquid. I also forgot to add the garlic, so I added 3 minced garlic cloves per bag. This is your base for a delicious fall meal, and when you do cook it in the slow cooker, it makes the whole house smell amazing, and I highly recommend you make some homemade bread with it.
Who's gonna help me? You wanna help me?
I know what?
I don't know yet. Something.
All right, it's time to get back to work. Heading back out to my fridge and pulling out 4 pounds of ground beef for this next recipe.
All right, now I'm gonna make some meatballs. This is my favorite meatball recipe. It's so delicious. I have it in a cookbook, and I just looked online and I did find that there is the recipe online. This is from Giada de Laurentiis, and it's amazing. So, pretty self-explanatory. We're just gonna put all this meat in this bowl.
To this bowl, I'm adding 4 tablespoons of ketchup. Now I'm adding 6 cloves of minced garlic.
So you are supposed to grate your onion on a box grater to get it really fine and to get the juices as well. But that kind of is what I got when I used the food processor. There's a lot of onion juice at the bottom here. So I'm gonna try and get those small bits along with the juice and use that. And that just adds a lot of flavor to the meatballs.
So I'm adding 2 whole onions grated.
I'm hoping that this garlic will kind of thaw as I'm putting this together right now, so it's not in one chunk. 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese, that is a lot. So 2/3 cups of Parmesan cheese, but I'm doubling it, so I'm gonna do that twice. Where's my salt? 1, 2, 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, be about a 1/2 teaspoon.
Now I'm adding 2/3 cups of Italian seasoned breadcrumbs that I made the day before. Now it's time to shape my meatballs. I'm gonna have to do this in several batches because there's a lot of meat here. I'm shaping my meatballs about 1.5 inches thick, and now I'm cutting up some smoked mozzarella into little cubes. This is what makes these meatballs so delicious, better than any meatball I've ever had. And I'm just gonna stuff that little cube of cheese into the inside of the meatball, and then we'll get that in the oven at 400 for about 15 minutes. This is a time-consuming process, but it is worth it in my opinion. This is one of those meals that are a real treat to us, so because I'm making so many of these and putting them in the freezer, I'm really excited to enjoy those later.
All right, I'm gonna come see your fort now. Let me see, Noah. He says it's not done yet, but we're gonna check it out. Wow, look at this beautiful living room. This is just such beautiful decorating. Oh.
Bring it down. I can almost jump.
Oh yeah, you got so much room, so spacious. This is a fun day at home. A fun day at home also means a very messy day at home, but we were all kids once and we know how it is, right? These are the meatballs. They look so good.
Moving on to a new favorite of mine, I'm pulling out the shredded chicken that I made yesterday. And we're gonna make some Salsa Verde chicken enchiladas. You start by dicing up 2 bell peppers and a whole onion. I'm sauteing those in a bit of avocado oil and adding 6 minced garlic cloves, a teaspoon of cumin, a half teaspoon of salt. Mix that up, and then I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of cream cheese and just kind of stir that up and get that to begin melting. Make sure your heat is not too high here. I'm adding a cup of salsa verde to my chicken. I added probably too much chicken to this. I normally have less, but because I had so much shredded chicken, I was trying to use it up. So if it starts to look dry, you can add some chicken broth or more salsa verde. I'm also adding a cup and a half of shredded cheese. This is a queso blend of melting cheeses. I'm gonna turn the heat off.
We wanna make our sauce real quick. So into a bowl, you're gonna do about a cup of salsa verde, and a cup of sour cream. Put those together. Okay. So this is such a good sauce. This is a new recipe for me. I just made it in my last video and I loved it so much that I wanted to try it out for the freezer. So that's what we're doing today. All right, so we've got our creamy salsa verde sauce. And now we just simply need to fill these tortillas and get them in here. Kind of running out of space here. It's getting quite messy in this kitchen. And I need a better system. Let's put my meat here. There we go. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, let's begin. So this recipe is gonna be on my blog, and because I'm batch cooking today, I'm not following recipes exactly. I'm kind of winging it with what I have and also just kind of how much time I have. So these are not exactly following the recipe. Ideally, this chicken would be a little bit more creamy. It would have a little more sauce to it. But this is gonna work for now. These freezer recipes are for nights when I've had a busy day and I don't wanna think about dinner, because even though I love to cook, there are plenty of nights when I just need a night off from cooking.
I have a busy day.
You have a busy day.
Building my fort.
Ooh, can I see your fort? Tell me when it's ready and I'll come check it out. Okay? I almost feel like I could put some of this sauce into this meat because it's so good, and I think I have more than I need. So I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I think that's gonna taste better. So.
I'll get the fluffy, the other bird one in the car.
Okay.
I'm glad
Yeah, because then your blanket is still here. Okay, and so then on top, you're gonna put the sauce and some cheese.
This is on another night when my enchiladas were already frozen and it was time to heat them up and have them for dinner. I just wanted to show you my process. So after baking it with the foil on for a while, I then took the foil off until it looked nice and golden and crispy. You don't want your tortillas to be mushy, so you really want to make sure you let them bake long enough so that kind of dries them out and adds some texture to the enchiladas. So this was great, especially on a busy night when I had other things to do besides cook dinner. I'm moving on to another recipe that I have on my blog, but first I'm going to take these enchiladas out. They looked so perfect. I can't wait to dig into these. This recipe is supposed to mimic a chicken pot pie, but healthier and easy to throw together. So I'm starting with a few tablespoons of butter and sauteing all those veggies. I had 3 whole carrots, 3 ribs of celery, a whole onion, and a sweet potato.
So for my spices here, I have onion, thyme, sage, a little bit of curry powder, black pepper, and salt. And I think that's it. All right, I have 4 or 5 cloves of garlic here.
Add the seasonings as listed, and then you're gonna add in all of the chicken. Right on top of that, I'm adding 1 cup of rinsed brown rice. And then for that rice to cook, we're gonna add some liquid. So I'm doing a whole can of full fat coconut milk and then about 2 cups of chicken broth. And now I'm adding in about a half cup of frozen peas and frozen corn. Give that a little stir, and then we're gonna cook that on low with the lid on it and let that rice cook for about 45 minutes. So my rice skillet is done. I like to top it with some cheese. I have some shredded Colby Jack cheese here, but cheddar works well too. For the freezer version, I wouldn't do this part yet. I would transfer that meal to a freezer-safe container, then top it with cheese, and then you can do this step when you go to reheat it. Keep the casserole covered with foil when you reheat it at 350 for about 45 minutes until it's warmed all the way through. Then take that foil off for the last 15 minutes to add some extra crisp to the top of your casserole. Well, that was a jam-packed video. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun filming this and spending the whole day in my kitchen. I really felt in my element, and I hope that it helps you too. I'm gonna add a lot of those recipes in the description, and maybe it will inspire you to get busy in your own kitchen. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this sort of content, and I will see you next time.
But they should go to the freezer. That's what I do. All right, thank you guys.